5 years. And so we've assembled a panel of speakers, and I'll introduce those here in a moment. And each of these speakers has a perspective from the work they do on agricultural issues. And we've tried to organize the call so that we address the different stakeholders' concerns, local, new farmers, companies that are in the production business, as well as individuals who work in the farm industry. So let me first start by introducing our panelist. Bob Junk is the local economy manager for the Fay Penn Economic Development Council. Fay Penn is located in Pennsylvania, and Bob works on many different agricultural issues with a particular focus on building resilient, strong local markets for farmers. Our next panelist is Lorette Pichano, and Lorette is Executive Director of the Rural Coalition, which is a broad-scale organization based in Washington, D.C. that ensures that food policy affects rural communities in a positive way. And finally, Ferd Hefner is the Policy Director of the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. And Ferd has the distinction of having worked on farm bills since 1977, and the National Sustainable Ag Coalition is a group of 90 organizations working mostly at the federal level on food and agricultural policy. Bob, I'll turn it over to you to start the webinar then.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for everybody who has signed on to hear this overview. I'm going to start right off, and as we move through the PowerPoint between Lorette and Ferd and myself, we'll be changing off where our expertise falls in play. But through this PowerPoint, one of the things that we're going to do is to give you a good overview of what the 2012, we're going to start out with some history, the impacts and the players of the past, overview, give an overview of current legislation and potential impacts that they will have on the farm bill. We're also going to talk about rebalancing, ways to make the farm bill more of a fair farm bill that will service the entire community and neighborhoods across the country. And then also we'll talk about challenges, gains, and strategies. And then, as Richard was saying at the end, we'll definitely have an opportunity for each and every one of you to ask questions and to us and be able to respond to them. And for some reason, my PowerPoint's not working. There, sorry about that. So what is the Farm Bill? The Farm Bill is really a set of federal laws that was established to give a general direction to American agriculture and food policy. As I think Richard mentioned earlier, it's roughly reauthorized every 5 years. The process is, the House Committee on Agriculture is one part of where the Farm Bill also will start, and then the other branch of government, of course, is the Senate, which is the Senate Agricultural, Nutrition, and Forestry. The last Farm Bill was passed in 2008, and it was called the Food Conservation and Energy Act. We put this slide together to give everybody an idea of who are the who's impacted, and then who's also players in the Farm Bill. Most people think that the Farm Bill is just for agriculture. It really isn't. It's a bill that is very broad-based. It impacts basically every one of us every day of our life. Because we all eat, and so whether you are a producer or whether you're involved in energy or in the environment, whether it's urban versus rural, whether it's school, youth, elderly. Everybody in the community is truly, truly impacted and has a role to play within this farm bill. Lorette, this is yours.
Okay. What we tried to do here is just show you these are the titles that were in the 2008 Farm Bill, and they change over time. And what we tried to do is group them for this presentation. What we're trying to figure out, like, what really has the most impact on the concept of sustainable businesses. So you'll see the color coding ones will deal with horticulture, organic ag, and research together. We'll talk about commodity programs and crop insurance, and conservation and energy will kind of go together, nutrition programs. So that's how we've organized the presentation, hopefully to make it so that you can follow it. And also, you know, we can really keep on focusing on how each of these aspects would have an impact on sustainable business. Back to you, Bob.
Lorette and Ferd, both of you have this one.
Want to start, Ferd?
Sure, happy to. So this is a pie chart. Actual pie of what the Farm Bill division of funding looked like the last time around, and I think, you know, an important thing to note here is one could also have a pie that just left the nutrition side of it out and then could go into finer detail of what the rest of it looks like, because the SNAP or food stamp part in the nutrition title takes up such a big amount of the total, and is now significantly over 80% today of the total pie, and because food stamps more so than any of the other parts of the funding is very dependent on the overall economy, it can fluctuate quite a bit in a kind of counter-cyclical kind of way. So it's at a very significant all-time high right now. But depending on what happens to the economy, it may not stay that way. Anyway, you can see how it divides out. It's important to note that that the current Farm Bill is being written during a time when there's quite a bit of attention to deficit reduction, and it's widely presumed that the Farm Bill that gets written this year or possibly into next year will cut the total funding by somewhere between 23 and $33 billion over a 10-year time, roughly $2 to $3 billion a year cut overall. And as you can well imagine, the decision making over what gets cut and how it gets cut is in many respects the overwhelmingly time consuming and mentally consuming task that the two congressional agriculture committees are taking up right now. So
I guess what I'd like to also add is when you take a look at the other, which is roughly around 8%, especially when you talk about the pie and compared to the other different areas, where we're going to be talking about a lot of different programs later on in the presentation. That other is really a significant section that you will be hearing us talk a lot about, and it's the smallest piece of, well, it's not completely the smallest. Conservation is the smallest, but it's next to the smallest piece of pie, and it has a tremendous amount of programs within that piece of that pie.
Right, and also one of the things that's happening is, you know, the big debate in the House vote yesterday is to put more money back into defense and cut it out of food stamps. And, you know, this whole deficit reduction process, you're using agriculture to take a larger share of cuts so that particularly defense could take less, and that's a bigger debate we won't talk about a lot here, but just to let you know that, you know, sometime later this year and into 2013, there'll be a very big debate in Congress on that overall deficit reduction issue.
And some of the rumor in Washington right now, in years past when we did Farm Bill reauthorization, a lot of people was concerned about the Farm Bill not being held up because of farm programs, but this may be the first time that the Farm Bill could be derailed or stalled because of the nutrition programs. What I did here, I wanted to give everybody perspective of where the members of the Senate Ag Committee reside from. And so as you can see across the states or country, the blue, of course, is the Democrats, and the red is the Republicans. So you could see that how the representation across the country, especially in the Senate, is made up the Senate Ag Committee. And you can definitely see there's a very heavy concentration, of course, in the midsection of the country, and then also you have representation in the Northeast. So there's a lot of makeup, especially when you take a look at the red, of really being in what you would call rural and agricultural states. The next slide, I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to also see how the House is made up, where the members of the House Ag Committee reside, what districts are covered. The House is rather unique because when you see it, it's really more heavily focused within the central part of the country. And of course, you got some fair amount of representation in the East Coast also. The next slide, I put this in because within the Farm Bill debate, there's always been this discussion about commodity payments and direct payments to producers. And what you see there is a concentration of commodity payments that have been paid to producers based on 2007 census. The reason why I put this slide up is where the heavy concentration is. If you take a look, the Mississippi Valley, and then also Southern California, and sort of right to the heartland of America, with some concentration on the west or east coast. And part of that too will be in relationship to the issue of crop insurance, when you will be addressing crop insurance, which is also calculated, my understanding, within this basis also. Ferd?
Yeah, so one of the big things happening in ag policy in this Farm Bill is the Congress is about to do away with what we call direct payments. Direct payments came into ag policy in the mid-1990s and have been a feature ever since. They pay out every year on a fixed basis. They never vary from year to year. They're not calculated based on price or revenue or farm income or anything else. They're just set in statute and remain static over time and aren't responsive to changes in the farm economy. That was considered by those who backed it in the 1995-6 Farm Bill as a major reform that made the program, in their minds, more market-oriented. They've become increasingly criticized over the years as being unresponsive and therefore almost the opposite of the way they were sold originally, as less market-oriented rather than more. So it's pretty much a bipartisan, all regions of the country agreement that they're going to go away, and we'll discuss in a little bit what they're going to be replaced by. But that's just that's going to quickly become a historical footnote slide.
And then the next slide, and for some reason or another, oh, there we go. It's actually showing where the concentration of direct payments, and it's based on dollars per acre. And you can definitely now get a good feel of where a lot of the direct payments have been targeted and have been accessed by producers within the country. Now this again is based on crop year 2008 and 2009.
And I'd just add, Bob, that on this slide and the earlier one, the darkest colors are each time are representing cotton, rice, and peanut areas of the country.
That's a very good point.
Right, and if you were looking back at the other slides of where the members are from, it was those members primarily in the southern regions that weren't happy with moving forward with the current version of the Farm Bill. And so I think this also illustrates the politics that are related and how the Farm Bill is really very much a regional piece. Most of the Democrats in the South that you saw in the House of Representatives that were blue are Congressional Black Caucus or Hispanic Caucus members, but there's like 4 Southern senators who voted against the bill who are all Republicans, primarily on the what the Senate's version of the Farm Bill would do. And that's the only one.
Lorette, you may want to explain this slide and map.
Yeah, this one shows better rural poverty. Basically, it's the percentage of children in the school districts that are eligible for the free and reduced price lunch program. And I think here it's especially the free, and it doesn't show very well what's going on in urban areas because the urban areas are very small, but this is individual counties as the other ones are. And so the places that are the darkest green and almost black, they have the highest, they have the lowest percentage of children that are in free and reduced price lunch. It's a good indicator of poverty. And then the areas that are yellow, orange, and red are very much the poorest places with the biggest concentrations of youth. And if you look, primarily in the Northwest, in the North Central region, the red areas are mostly, and also in the Southwest are Indian reservations. It's really interesting if you look in the Southeast where there's the deep red, you'll notice those are all the counties where it was deep blue before, and oftentimes you have that very concentrated type of agricultural development with high concentrations of land, and in those cases you're more likely to have a disparity of income, so you'll have both kind of rich and poor. And we kind of show this to you because when we're thinking about sustainable development, we haven't gotten there yet in terms of the health of the rural areas. Like, even if you look in places throughout New York State, central Pennsylvania, and all through, kind of the Appalachia down into Oklahoma, you'll see a lot of places where the numbers are really not good. And if you take away what's in the Farm Bill or don't make it accessible to whole regions of the country, there really are not a lot of other options for balanced development in those areas. So we just want to kind of point that out. And if we're looking at a balanced sustainability nationwide, that's something we really have to work together on.
And Lorette mentioned this, and I want to draw your attention to like Arizona, New Mexico, and then that Mississippi Valley there. And then even look at the Georgia, that East Coast. If you remember from the future slides, there's a trend here that's happening because you got the same darkness as where direct payments and commodity programs are targeting too. And so, you know, there's some issues here that I think we really have to focus on as are we really doing good work with the system that we have in place, and are we solving hunger in a sense throughout the country? And I also want to just draw your attention to, you probably have a hard time seeing it, but the Philadelphia market is, or the area or the city is also a dark red. You can barely see it, but it's there. And then if you look just south of Pittsburgh, where Pittsburgh would be, that yellowish green is kind of where we're located at, and you know, we're right in the middle of as far as color zones, as far as looking at how many of our children are getting free lunches and living in poverty.
Yeah, and if you look all the way up through, there's like one red dot up in New York State, and all the way down towards the Mississippi border, all the way, there's still those issues. There's still disparities of income, and there is also poverty, and those are, I echo Bob's point. And two more places to look are down in Central Florida and in California, and actually in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas. Let's also remember those are areas where it's heavily specialty crops, and also in Arizona and to some extent New Mexico. And you have a lot of farm workers in those regions. And so you have the other thing where we're saying, you know, fresh fruit and vegetables are great, but let's also remember that some of the people who are not able to eat and be nourished are in fact food, and also the food chain workers. And that's all, Bob. Thanks.
So the next slide will be shared by all of us. So Ferd, if you want to go ahead and take the lead.
Okay. So some of the priority marker bills that we just want to mention here. So these are bills that have been introduced as not as bills that are going to themselves work through the system, but as grist for the mill for the Farm Bill debate. I'll talk about two of them and then turn it back over to Bob and Lorette. Both of these, the National Sustainable Ag Coalition have been working on for well over a year now, the Local Farms Food and Jobs Act and the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Opportunity Act. Both of them have been introduced last year, identical bills in the House and in the Senate, both with a degree of bipartisan support at least, and lead sponsors who are on the Agriculture Committee, since the Senate Agriculture Committee has already done its Farm Bill. We can say that a decent percentage, not as much as we had hoped for, from both of the bills are now part of the Senate committee passed Farm Bill, and we'll continue to work to get other pieces of it in as the bill goes to the floor and gets worked on by the House committee. The local food bill, as we call it for short, addresses all the Farm Bill, or almost all the Farm Bill titles. So it's comprehensive in that sense, really trying to use all the tools available to improve and increase the infrastructure at the state and local level for having greater agricultural and food development going on, creating jobs and hopefully better, healthier eating patterns. So that's that one. And likewise, the Beginning Farmer Bill addresses somewhat fewer titles than the Local Food Bill, but again, many of the Farm Bill titles are included, and obviously addressing the need to get the next generation of farmers on the landscape. So Bob, I'll let you talk about Go Farm.
Okay. Yeah, and these have been identified just so that the listeners understand that ASBC has a ag committee that has monthly conference calls, and we identified these 5 areas of our priorities bills that we're monitoring and supporting as they move forward. The Growing Opportunity for Agriculture and Response to Market Act, Senator Casey introduced the bill back in November. We have been working with the chairman of the Senate Ag Committee to see how we can incorporate it. You know, Ferd roughly talked about the Senate marked up their bill. We submitted an amendment. We did pull it so that later on we could still come back and talk about it on the floor in the future debate of the actual farm bill when it's brought up to the Senate floor for discussion and for additional amendments. It's also been introduced in the House. Representative Fudge from Cleveland attached it to her bigger urban farm bill proposal, and matter of fact, just Wednesday, the House Ag Committee subcommittee on credit held a hearing, and this was one of the points of discussion that the representative brought to the floor for discussion. So, you know, when we take a look at our where we're heading with at least these 3 right now, there's a lot of discussion, and Lorette will update us on the next one, which is actually starting to build some momentum for it too.
Okay. Yeah, we've been working in the Rural Coalition since 1978 on basically a body of law that's really civil rights in agriculture. And, you know, I think most business people are familiar with, you know, a lot of the non-discrimination pieces in the employment sector, and also kind of minimum wage laws and so forth. And so if you kind of think about what you know from the business sector, you know that you have to treat people fairly and so forth, and you know that all businesses should do that, and businesses that don't do that should not have an unfair advantage, and that equity is part of what sustainability is about, that everybody can be included. And what's happened in agriculture is that, you know, for many, many years you're looking at concentrations of land, and you know, farmers don't really have a minimum wage, so we needed to establish a definition of discrimination in agriculture, and it uses what was in the I'm sorry for the noise in the background, there's an ambulance going by, hopefully it'll go by in a second, but the whole concept of socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, and that's really out of Section 8A of the Small Business Act, and it's you know, it defines a group of people that are treated as on the basis of their membership as part of a group, like how they look, as opposed to their individual qualities. And so part of what we've worked on for many years is the fact that many times, particularly in the small southern communities and in other places, the staff of the Department of Agriculture did not always give fair access to land, to loans, to credit, and had a lot of information about the farmers, and in a way served to take land away from African American communities, Latino communities, American Indian communities. And what we've also tried, and because of that, those farms are oftentimes much smaller. There's more disparity in the size of farms in the South, you could see. So we're trying to work to restore people to the land. So we have, you know, the Outreach and Assistance Program for Socially Disadvantaged Farmers and Ranchers, and that with the Beginning Farmer and Rancher program are both restorative programs. In addition, we had a whole series of discrimination lawsuits ever since 1999. And so most of our members in the Rural Coalition have been out working, because in the last Farm Bill, we reopened the lawsuits, and as a result of the work that's been going on, the process for African American farmers actually closes today. it's the last end of the end, and when the lawsuit is finished, approximately $2 billion will be going back to African American producers and their families who've lost land. If you think of that in the overall context of all of the agriculture benefits, it really doesn't make up for the losses, but it is a big win. The Hispanic and women's lawsuits have not yet opened, and that's, they've been pending since 1999, and that should be starting in June. And there was a brief 6-month time period when American Indian farmers could get aid, and about 3,000 American Indian farmers did apply for that. So that's what's been keeping us busy, and we did not get a full bill developed. What we're doing is we're working on amendments, and so that's why we're calling it equity proposals. And right now we're working with Senator Tom Udall from New Mexico. The Senate actually put veteran farmers and ranchers into the program for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, and as a result of that, they put less funding in. They cut the funding from $75 million over 4 years to $25 million over 5 years. And so we're going to be working on an amendment, and we deeply appreciate support to up that funding to $150 million over 5 years. And we'll try and get similar increases. So those are the kind of pieces that we're talking about. We're also looking at how can we develop some better crop insurance tools, and we'll talk about that a little more, that will work better for the farmers and ranchers. We're trying to hold on to some gains like the Farm Worker Coordinator and the Office of Advocacy and Outreach, and we'll go through those in the various titles of the bill. But in general, it's to make sure that resources do go to the communities who've been left out in the past. So that's the overall gist of it.
Thanks. The next one, I'm sorry.
Hey, Bob. Hey, Bob,
yeah.
Richard here. I just wanted to quickly just do a quick time check. It's 35 after the hour, so just wanted to make sure we had enough time for questions.
Yeah, we'll finish up by at least quarter till. The next area, which is consumer right to know, it's House Bill 3553. It's Genetic Engineered Food Right to Know Act, and Representative Kucinich from Ohio introduced the bill, and it gives the consumer the right to know as far as labeling of any GE foods or genetically modified foods. The number of big companies out there are opposing it because of the fact that they feel that it's infringing on their rights to be able to market it. And so at this point in time, the bill has been introduced, and it definitely needs to get more support behind it to give the consumer the right to know what type and how the food was raised in the future. So we talked a good bit about the Senate markup bill and the amendments. The next step is just to kind of follow what is happening in the Senate, because it'll go to a full floor vote now. The House is still waiting on what the Senate's going to do. So I would encourage everybody to kind of keep their eye on ASB's website or the Rural Coalition or even NSAC's website. We kind of threw this in just to make a relationship to the fact that, small farmers have always been sort of left behind in farm bills in the past, and one of the things that we really would like to focus on is the fact that we've got to bring fairness into this farm bill to give small family farmers the opportunity to access the same type of programs. Ferd, this is your slide.
Yeah, with time passing here, I'll keep this fairly simple. It's a highly complex situation, but I spoke earlier about the direct payments and how they're going to go away. In the Senate bill that has been passed out of the committee, they're being replaced by something alternatively called either the Agricultural Risk Coverage or ARC program, but more often in the press you'll see it referred to as the Shallow Loss Program. It basically takes funding for commodity programs down from about $5 billion a year to about a little over $3 billion a year, still fairly healthy-sized program for the big commodity crops. It operates in a different fashion, and I won't go into it unless people have questions about it. But that on the major commodities, that's the big thing going on. With the exception of cotton, which is removing itself from the commodity title altogether and moving all of its money over to the crop insurance side. You see that listed about 4 bullets down there, called the STAX program. So cotton basically took its money out of Title I and put it into the crop insurance title. The big political debate right now is between particularly rice, peanuts, and sorghum, more southern commodities who do not like the Senate bill, versus corn, soybeans, wheat, and others that do. In all likelihood, the House will come up with a different balance on that. If you remember back to the maps, you'll recall that there were more southern districts represented in the House Agriculture Committee. That will probably result in a different commodity title, and eventually it'll have to be negotiated between the House and the Senate. Crop insurance, I'll just say this, it's probably the big theme of this farm bill from the agricultural members of Congress. There's no cuts there, there's only increases. It is already today the largest of the farm program subsidies in terms of number of dollars per year, and that would just continue to grow under the new farm bill. So, Bob, I think I'll leave it at that rather than getting into any more detail. On the conservation title. Yeah, the conservation title, which has grown over the years, starting in the 1985 Farm Bill and growing steadily ever since. It's now, funding-wise, as large as the commodity title on an annual basis. And it, too, is on the chopping block for a cut of about $6 billion over the next 10 years. Still leaves quite a bit of funding in the conservation title, but it is also a rather large cut, especially given that conservation also tends to get cut in the annual appropriations process in Congress too, so it sort of takes a double hit. The other big theme for this conservation title of this farm bill is consolidation of programs, which primarily has happened in the Senate bill on the easement side of conservation, so where there's dollars available to buy easements on farms. Those programs, which now several are merged into a single kind of umbrella program, and there's been other mergers here and there, but that's probably the other big theme. But most of all the tools that we've had in the conservation title continue. They just have some new names and some new formats to some of them, but the tools remain the same. There's incentives for working lands to do conservation where you have land in production. There's money, though declining, to take land out of production, and then there's money for easements. Those are the big categories. So I think we can go on to the next one, Bob.
Nutrition. Ferd and Lorette.
Yeah, I'll just keep going, and Lorette can chime in. So this is where if the Farm Bill dies this year, which it could, it will probably be more than anything else because of a sharp difference in viewpoints. That's more most of the Farm Bill is regional debates. This one is more of a partisan debate over the size of the food stamp program and how much it should contribute to deficit reduction. The House has passed a standalone bill that just actually passed on the floor yesterday that took a big $33 billion or almost $35 billion cut out of food stamps, or the SNAP program as it's called today. That bill is not going anyplace, but it has passed on the House floor when the House takes out the Senate bill that passed out of committee has a $4 billion cut to SNAP that was previously to last year. Two committees were working on a farm bill for the deficit, so-called super committee in Congress. The Senate kept that same agreement from last year. The House is almost definitely going to increase that, probably something closer to a $14 billion cut when they get around to working on their bill, and that could very easily mark the end of a farm bill process for the year, unless there's signals that that a compromise could be reached. So it's a very politically, it's a highly charged situation. Substantively, it's a incredibly important program in terms of protection for low-income Americans and to try to control hunger. And so these cuts, while they get bantied around as all sorts of rhetoric related to fraud and abuse, all sort of boil down to substantial benefit cuts to families and particularly to kids. Lorette, you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, a few things. The food distribution programs, there's little pieces that are kind of buried in various places. Like there's a food distribution program on Indian reservations, because on many reservations there's not any stores. And we did get authority that we're hoping will stay in so that the government can actually purchase food that's grown on the Indian reservations and use that to feed the people there instead of bringing it in from the outside. On some of the issues like fruit and vegetable promotion, we've also been raising the issue that some of the industries that will be supplying this food are in fact the ones that have the worst record of how they treat farm workers. But that seems to be one of those issues that's a little bit nuclear and nobody wants to talk about up on the Hill. We did, but we continue to work on that and monitor the fact that we need to remember again that some of the people who are not able to eat are in fact the farm workers, and also we have the immigration issues that I know businesses are very, very worried about. And so those are not really handled in the Farm Bill, but let's just put an asterisk that those are important. And then if you look back over the last couple of slides, it'll be interesting to add up after we get finished with this debate how the proportions of resources have changed in the various farm bills, because I think bit by bit we're getting a little bit more for the local food and for the community food security and farmers markets and so forth. So the balance is changing. And then when you cut direct payments, the sacred cow this time, as Ferd noted, is crop insurance. And just one other piece to note, we're trying to make those programs work for this new generation of small producers who are in fact experiencing many disasters and have a lot of risk. The Senate Farm Bill has some good provisions about that, but we definitely want to just understand that these issues all do have implications for what we're going to eat in the future.
The next title is Research, Horticulture, and Organic Agriculture, and I'll just go over this real quick. Research, there's a number of programs that are devoted to actual funding for those programs, such as organic agriculture, rural development, specialty crops. And so this is a very key area for future development in those different fields. And sometimes research is always looked at as the area where cuts can take place. And then Title 10, which is a new title in the Farm Bill that was put in last year, includes specialty crops programs that are focused to help promote those products, along with the organic agriculture. Both of those, again, are newly funded and especially specialty crop is a new program, and that for example, as Pennsylvania, it's a huge industry. A lot of people don't realize it, but specialty crops also incorporates landscapers, nuts, and so any kind of flowering trees or nurseries are also included under specialty crops. Lorette, you want to go over this slide real quick?
Yeah, I think we just about went over that, and you know, as you can see, things we're not balanced at this point. But when you consider how the direct cuts that may be happening, we may see some changes in balance into the future. So I think this will be an interesting one to come back and look at. The whole idea is that our farm policy should conform more with what healthy eating and nutrition is.
So these next couple slides, if we can get through them rather quickly so we can get to our last couple slides that have some action steps.
Sure. On energy, the energy title's been around for a couple of farm bills now. It had its first significant pot of money in the 2008 Farm Bill. It was nearly left out of the Senate bill, and then a major amendment during markup 2 weeks ago put in $800 million for a variety of different energy programs, including the Rural Energy for America program, which in some respects might be the most of greatest interest to this audience because it provides farmers and small businesses with money to do energy conservation on farm and in business. So that did get at least some funding as part of this amendment. The next one, Bob, is then credit and rural development. Credit has some very important provisions for socially disadvantaged farmers and for beginning farmers and ranchers. Some of what we're looking for in those areas was included in the Senate bill, but other important areas were left out. So will likely be the subject for future amendments. The rural development title perhaps gets the prize for being the worst title coming out of the Senate bill, in that it completely got shut out of money, and this is where the programs that really do job development and business development at the community level are so important. It will, I can guarantee, be the subject of an amendment on the Senate floor to try to put at least a modest amount of money back into rural development. Rural development has received Farm Bill money only for the last 3 farm bills, and we don't want that to be 3 and then out. We want it to continue, so that's going to be a key subject moving forward.
And I just want to draw attention to rural development because a lot of our listeners, when you take a look at it, these really impact our rural areas, and as far as community development, business development, you know, RMAP, which is the Rural Micro Enterprise Assistance Program, it's zero financed, and so that's helping small businesses on Main Street. So I think this is where ASBC and its membership really needs to step up to the plate and make sure that these rural communities are represented fair.
And co-op development is also in rural development.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to just talk very briefly here because I've already gone over some of this, but what we're trying to do here is do something to make up for the losses that communities of color have had in the past. We now have added veterans in. Many veterans are, in fact, people of color, farmers and ranchers, and we're trying to work with the veteran communities, and that actually could become a place that the House Veteran Affairs majority is now following the Rural Coalition on Twitter, so they're the Republicans. So, you know, maybe there's some hope for, by working together with new allies, that will have more political power. And then there are the very important farm worker programs here as well. So I think I can just leave it as that, and just to say that we really appreciate the support of the business community on trying to keep open the offices and the programs that are especially crucial for both these groups and beginning farmers and ranchers.
Okay. The next slide is Act Now. I know we have some letters that ASBC has put onto our website as far as sign-on letters. We also encourage each and every one of you to contact your U.S. senators and representatives, and you know, you can either check out again the Rural Coalition's website along with NSAC and ASBC to get a better feel of some of the issues that and how they're being impacted. Also, we're looking at the possibility of developing a cell phone action network, and there's a number of them already out there. So we encourage you to get involved in that system or networks that are in your area or connected to your organization. The other issue is get involved in ASBC monthly Ag Committee conference calls. This is one way that you can be updated. I know the other organizations that are represented on this call as presenters also have monthly calls, and Lorette, you may want to mention about the GOAT as far as what it stands for.
Okay, GOAT means getting our act together on the Farm Bill, and we have a weekly call at 3 o'clock Eastern time, and it's open to anybody who wants to participate. That kind of gives an update on what's happening. We try and keep in touch with a whole range of groups, and we also do send out action alerts, so you can send an email to the Rural Coalition, and if you check on our website, or maybe we can send a follow-up. So if you want to participate and learn more about the process, you're welcome to join us.
And what I just did, I went to the last slide, and both the Rural Coalition along with NSAC's websites there. Most of you have already have ASBC website. If not, we can definitely forward it back out to all the registrars. But these are three areas that you definitely can get informed of where the Farm Bill is going, how it's being impacting into rural areas and communities. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions, and so that we have about 10 minutes left, roughly.
This is Sean with ASBC. So just this is to everyone here. If you have a question, just there should be a little button. Oh, looks like Sammy has one. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that right. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, can you guys hear me okay?
We sure can.
We sure can. Okay, cool. Just making sure the computer worked. Hey, Bob, this is Sam, who you know locally here in your region. You guys did a great job presenting this. We were never aware of sort of how extensive the Farm Bill was. And we've been thinking about parts of it recently and sort of watching with astonishment as we see how difficult it is to do something as simple as just labeling genetically modified food. I know that there's a ballot in California that Monsanto is projected to spend $60 million to fight, and the Farm Bill has its own provision, it sounds like, that you're working on for labeling. So I was thinking, if something as easy as labeling food to tell people what's in it, basically, is this difficult to pass? I recently heard John Robbins say that wouldn't it be cool if instead of helping pay for unhealthy food, which you mentioned in that pyramid slide, which is very good, what if we taxed that food and provided assistance to healthy food like green vegetables? That, to me, that sounds pretty reasonable, but what do you all think? Is that something that's so far out and so difficult that that's probably 20 years out before we could even talk about that with respect to the Farm Bill?
Well, yeah, I'll take a quick stab. Go ahead. I'll take a quick stab at that, because the thing is, the Farm Bill, we got COOL, which is a meat labeling provision within the Farm Bill, that all retailers must label where the meat has come from, whether it's United States or Argentina, or Mexico, or Canada. That was a huge undertaking, and it took years to get that done. I know when back being a board member of National Farmers Union, we were dealing with this issue all the way back in the 80s. Trying to get labeling and to be able to identify those products takes many, many years. Just look at the RBGH. Now it's something that everybody looks for, and it's pretty much always on a milk carton. But Sam, I think you hit on a very sensitive issue, because anybody that wants to talk about taxes, it's almost like you don't even get through the door. But it makes a lot of sense, because we all know how nutrition is tied back to healthcare, and the well-being of individuals. And so pretty much the way that we grow it and process it and consume it is really going to be and have a direct impact of our, health. And we all know that health is and healthcare is one of the highest costing things to our society today. We know we have an obesity issue within our kids today, and that's also tied in a relationship to having access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And,
yeah, and I
we
think
also know. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, another thing in terms of the taxing idea, a lot of the taxing authority is at the local and state level, and I think there are a couple of places where they are starting looking at beverage taxes and sugar taxes and so forth. And so some of the things that are happening out in the communities, some of our allies like Community Food Security Coalition, and there's a Healthy Food, Healthy People Coalition, are working hard on, sometimes things start at the local level and at the state level. There's also labeling requirements in New York State and a couple of other states, so fast food is labeled. So I think that things will come up from the roots and they'll eventually make their way up to national policy, huh, Bob?
Yeah, and I think the other thing everybody has to remember too is that we have trade agreements out there, and I was talking to a couple people a week or so ago that part of the problem we have sort of a roadblock when we get to labeling is the fact that the WTO then plays into saying, okay, well, with this labeling, how does that impact imports? And so we have these trade agreements, whether it's GATT, NAFTA, the list goes on, of how that would or could impact restrictions to products coming from other countries. So this is really a deep issue, and it's going to be an issue that's going to be continuing to be debated well beyond this farm bill. But
Hey,
it's a
Bob,
good one.
we had another question from Sherry. Sherry, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm not sure if you said it or not, I didn't catch. Are both the Senate and the House committee members, are those appointed to those committees?
They're appointed.
They're appointed by their party. And there's a whole ranking, so the Republicans choose their members, and then then they, depending on how many, you'll see they're listed in order of their rank on the committee, their seniority, and so sometimes if they want to take the chair of a different committee, then their rank falls lower. But yeah, it's a highly political process, and so if you look, you'll see there, what order they rank in.
Well, I was just trying to understand, it showed that Southern California had an incredibly large concentration of those commodity payments, but I didn't see any Senate representation in the committee from California, and there was minimal House representation. And I found that interesting, so I was curious how those committee members were either appointed or elected.
Well, I think in that case, I think Dianne Feinstein's on appropriations, and that has like more power than agriculture. And so remember, California has a lot of issues. You do have a group, you have Mr. Costa, Mr. Cardoza, and Mr. Baca are some of the members from California, and then Mr. Farr had been on the Appropriations Committee. So sometimes if you look at their other committee assignments, it'll make a little more sense.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll also chime in that when you take a look like small business, like appropriations, and there's a couple other committees, they'll actually have subcommittees relating to agriculture. So they'll also try to get themselves positioned on some of the other committees that would relate to part of their constituents, and then also be able to relate back to agriculture also.
Thank you.
Sean, are there any other questions?
Well, doesn't look like anyone else has any, so we could probably close unless anyone else has anything that they'd like to cover.
Yeah. Any other questions, anybody?
I think we're clear from our end, Richard.
Okay,
Richard, I just wanted to.
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to add one thing that for everybody, don't forget to go to ASBC website because we're hoping to put the PowerPoint on there, so if people want to use it for future reference, along with the support letters of organizations to be able to sign on, and then also kind of be able to track the movement of a couple of those bills that we have listed earlier.
I will, Bob, I will make sure to email out the PowerPoint if that's all right with all of you folks, and also a recording will be made available of the webinar. So if anyone missed it, that will be up on our site hopefully within the next few days. So everyone that's registered will get an email from me.
Good. And let me thank you, Sean, and Bob and Ferd and Lorette. And let me just mention that American Sustainable Business Council works on a wide range of policy issues. So sustainable ag is just one of those. And if you haven't been to our website, please go and check it out, asbcouncil.org. And there you'll find information on lots of other issues: healthcare, tax policy, climate, carbon rules that EPA is working on, and all these things, in our view, get linked together to foster what we believe is a more sustainable economy. And the role of business in making that happen is really essential. So feel free to be in touch with us. We'd be happy to work with you if we're not doing so already. And again, Bob and Lorette and Ferd, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. And we will be in touch with you all. And thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.